make sure no Mutalisks try to sneak by. Extra Marines in the mineral line, in case they do get in there, those could scare off a small group of Mutalisks fairly easily, give time for my main army to be able to react. And for some reason I also don't have my Marines on a separate command key. I think these are control group, that's what it's called. I don't know what the command cards here down the bottom right. Anyway, I usually keep them in a separate control group so that I can stem them separately and not waste health on my main army. But looks like, let's see if we're gonna move. Sounds like we're gonna move out here. Zerg has expanded down here. We don't want them to get too comfortable, too out of control. And they've also expanded at the top. But we've already decided to push in this direction. Also want to remove any scouts on Xel'Naga watchtowers before moving out. Don't want the opponent to know your entire army strength. Don't want, unless you want them to know, of course, but typically you probably don't want them to know your entire army strength, unit composition, whether you're just going to harass or send your whole army towards an expansion. So took out the Xel'Naga watchtower. Opponents don't know a whole lot about our army at this point. Some Ultralisks, Immortals here probably try to absorb a lot of siege tank damage. Spreading out the siege tank, getting a very strong fire base, I suppose you could call it. Spread out my units a little bit just to be able to protect the siege tanks. Try and keep any of them from getting sniped. Oh, I'm sorry, this is my allies base. Ha. Anyway, got the colors a little confused there, teal and blue. Yep, now you can make fun of me. As there are two Protoss players in this game. Another very, how would I put it, strong strategy is to send out just a few units to an expansion, try to, basically what we're doing here is baiting in the opponent. They don't know our army's sitting here quite yet. They probably didn't. Apparently they're not paying too much attention just to those few units there that did run into our army. Zerg is not going with Protoss here. Protoss is getting his army taken out. And I did try to bait those units in. Looks like it worked. Creep here. Definitely want to take that out. Don't want the opponent's creep getting too crazy. Not only will it allow the Zerg to be able to move around the map much easier, but also provide vision. And that's another thing I was worried about setting up over here, is the creep could have possibly seen my army. Oh, that army just did manage to scoot by over there, and sorry, missing some harassment over here. That's where they were trying to go. I could have cut those units off to be able to respond to this carrier harassment. Carriers have quite a few kills here. And meanwhile, Zerg moving in alone to try and make something happen here again, moving in without his ally. Siege tanks doing a lot of damage here, a lot of zealots. They're able to stop up those Ultralisks. Ultralisks able to almost get all those zealots down into the orange or the yellow or the red. Orange is lower than yellow. But if he had moved in with his ally, could have at least done a lot more damage here. My ally lately has been using the term chip damage, which is pretty self-explanatory, I think, just chipping away at the opponent, keeping them from having a large army, and eventually just obtaining enough of advantage to where they wouldn't be able to counter anymore. Be able to muster up a large enough force to be able to handle whatever whatever kind of army you do have. Still even more overlords sitting around out here. I'm not sure why he is doing this. It seems like he is putting them in key places, possibly to spot these minerals, but honestly, you can scout the whole map just with creep. And if you obtain and maintain map control, it basically doesn't matter at that point. We'll look at the army tab here, units, army tab. Still have superior supply by about 25, which is a good number for both players. I am almost capped, quite close to being capped there. And we definitely have a very strong unit combination here. They're not, it doesn't seem like they're going to still be able to do much against these carriers. This player is still massing a ton of Ultralisks. Probably should have done a tech switch. Not sure why the Immortal's out there hanging out by himself. Must be a loner. Ton of Immortals here. Ton of Ultralisks. That's not going to do anything against these carriers. Not going to do anything against these Marines. The Ultralisks could probably do quite a bit against the Marines, but they're really just going to get hammered by these carriers. The Immortals will be able to buffer the siege tanks, but they won't be able to buffer anything against all of these Marines. 53 Marines. Even getting a few Thors. It's good to mix up the unit combination as they all have different ranges. Marines have 5, Marauders have 6, and Thors have 7. So that way, if your army is all grouped up, and not every Marine is going to be able to have range, but then your Marauders would have range, and your Thors would have range. Now moving up to the top of the map, one of our opponents trying to expand here, setting up siege tanks. Opponent moving into the siege tank range, all these siege tanks set up, dealing massive damage to all these units up here. Ally trying to come in and sideswipe. Not a whole lot of room here to get Ultralisks in and get quite a bit of those Ultralisks just stuck in this vortex here. Meanwhile, carriers still chipping away at this army up here on the top. We're waiting for this vortex to wear off. Vortex wears off siege tanks, and all my army just dealing all this damage to these Ultralisks. Only maybe 3 Ultralisks able to attack at a time, and they try to run away, and another vortex able to trap all those Ultralisks. Not able to let them get away to be able to regroup or resupply. Carriers just up here able to do continual damage on these stalkers, allow the siege tanks to be able to wear them down. Ultralisks come back out of that vortex, just able to get slaughtered at this point by all these siege tanks and the rest of this army here. The opponent probably could have really used High Templar at that point. All of these, the majority of my army is still pretty much just Marines and Marauders, Terran Bio with only, what, 3 Thors. I've had Storms just ruin entire armies of mine before, especially on this map. And then the siege tanks, and then basically just ignore the siege tanks at that point. Rally our army back to the center. Bad pathing there. Definitely want to watch the pathing on your units as well. Make sure they're taking the route away from the army when pathing, especially on the new maps. On the new maps, I wasn't very careful and lost entire armies basically to pathing the wrong way. Not very used to the new pathing on some of the newer maps. Zerg runs in here, tries to force us out again. Neither of them had made up a very large force at that point, and they leave the game. So another good game for us. They definitely lost quite a bit after engaging separately, when basically a trap to get them to respond to saving their expansion on the bottom set them very far behind. Didn't saturate their expansions very well at the beginning. Probably could have changed the game a great deal in the early game, and chalk up another win. Also didn't tech out of gateway units. Also didn't even really get all that many Colossus. Still kept with the Mortals. But High Templar take out, as you can tell, most of this is, look at that, in at least 2 full groups of Marines. Zerg just continued to make Ultralisks, a lot of Ultralisks, but massing the single unit. I mean, even against air units, what would Ultralisks do versus air units? So another game, and hopefully you guys liked it. Make sure to comment or subscribe or thumbs up, whatever you guys like to do. And thank you very much.